The twin suns of Vardis Prime burned red across the palace towers, their light spilling through the crystal walls like molten fire. Inside the great hall, the alien king Reinar sat upon his throne, his silver crown dimmed with age and worry. Around him, his council of generals argued loudly, their armored tails slamming the floor in frustration. The core dominion has taken 3 more systems. Your Majesty, said General Vorak, his scales black with soot from battle. If we cannot mount a defense soon, Vardis itself will be next. The king's tired eyes moved from one face to another. Every one of them was strong, battle-hardened, and confident. Every one of them had failed to stop the enemy. He raised a clawed hand, silencing the room. Enough, he said quietly. Strength alone has not saved us. Perhaps strength alone is not what we need. A low murmur went through the hall. The word weakness was almost forbidden among the Vardians, a warrior species that valued power above all. Yet the king's gaze was not on his generals. It was on the frail young figure standing near the steps of his throne. His daughter, Princess Ira. She stood in a soft gray robe, her thin hands clasped before her, her pale skin almost transparent in the red light. Her body trembled slightly under the heavy gazes of the council. She was small, too small for a Vardian of her age. The healers said she was born with a weak heart and low energy flow. She could barely hold a training blade, let alone lead armies. But she was the king's only child. Father, Ira said softly, her voice trembling, I do not want to be a burden to you. Let me help in some way, even if I cannot fight. Reinar's gaze softened, but before he could speak, General Vorak's deep voice filled the room again. With respect, Your Majesty, the princess is too delicate for this war. We should focus on defending the border worlds. The Dominion will not be stopped by words or hope. Reinar turned his head slowly. And yet you have failed to stop them with your weapons, he said. The general stiffened, his mouth closing in anger. The king rose from his throne. His armor shimmered faintly, heavy with golden plates and carved marks of every battle he had ever fought. He looked older than his years, tired not by war itself but by the endless cycle of loss it brought. He stepped toward the center of the hall. I have watched our people become trapped by pride. We call ourselves strong, yet our strength is breaking us. Perhaps we must learn from others who fight differently. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. They knew what he meant before he said it. Humans, whispered one of them. Yes, said the king. Humans. The word carried both fascination and scorn. Humans were a new species in the Galactic Alliance. Small, fragile, and lacking in natural armor or claws. But they had something no one could quite name. They adapted. They learned fast. They survived things no other race could. General Vorak crossed his arms. With respect, Majesty, humans are reckless. They charge into danger as if they have no fear of death. Exactly, Reinar replied, and that is why they live. 2 days later, the royal envoy left Vardis Prime, heading toward Eden 9, a human colony world known for military training. The king's message was clear. He sought help from a human warrior, one known for training soldiers from many worlds, a man who believed that strength could be taught, not inherited. That man's name was Commander Dale. When the royal ship landed on Eden 9, the planet's sky burned with storms. The air smelled of metal and dust. The Vardian guard stepped out first, weapons drawn, scanning the barren plain. Then Era followed, her cloak wrapped tightly around her small body. Waiting at the landing zone stood a tall human in a gray uniform. His face was weathered, eyes calm but sharp. He carried no weapon, only a small training stick on his back. You're far from home, he said simply. His voice was rough but steady. I am Princess Ira of Vardis, she said, bowing slightly. My father sent me to learn strength. He studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'm Commander Dale. If you came to learn strength, you'll find it, but not the kind you expect. That evening, Dale led Era to a small camp surrounded by rock cliffs. The camp was simple, just a few tents, practice dummies, and metal crates stacked beside a fire pit. Ira looked around and frowned. This is where you train soldiers? Yes, Dale replied, sitting by the fire. Here, strength isn't given. It's earned. He handed her a cup of warm water. Tomorrow we start. The next morning, Ira woke to the sound of explosions. She ran outside to see human soldiers climbing cliffs, running drills and dragging heavy packs across the sand. Dale stood among them, shouting orders. He pointed at Era. "You're late." I thought training begins after breakfast," she said nervously. "Out here," he replied. "The enemy doesn't wait for breakfast. Move." He tossed her a wooden training rod. It felt heavier than it looked. "Today you climb that ridge," she looked up. The ridge was tall, steep, and jagged. The wind howled around it. "I can't," she whispered. "Then try," Dale said simply. For hours she struggled. Her hands slipped. Her arms shook. She fell many times. Each time she expected Dale to stop her, but he only watched. When she finally reached halfway up, her fingers bled and her arms felt like fire. She wanted to quit, but something in his expression, calm, unbending, made her keep going. By sunset, she collapsed at the top. Her chest burned, her breathing harsh. Dale climbed up behind her, barely sweating. "You did it," he said. "I failed," she gasped. "It took me all day." He shook his head. "No, you finished. That's what matters." That night, Era lay awake in her tent. Her body ached everywhere. She stared at the stars and thought of her father's worried eyes. Maybe I really am weak, she thought. But then she remembered Dale's words. "You finished. That's what matters." Something small and stubborn stirred inside her. The days turned into weeks. Each day brought a new test. Running through storm fields, carrying heavy stones, sparring with human recruits. Dale never praised her, but he never mocked her either. His lessons were harsh but simple. "Pain means you're learning," he told her once. When she fell, he helped her up only once, the first day. After that, he only said, "Stand," and somehow she did. The other human soldiers watched her with quiet respect. They could see her trying, fighting against her own limits. Some began to cheer her on. One soldier, Liam, even offered her food after a hard day. "You've got more heart than half the guys here," he told her with a grin. Her hands hardened, her steps grew surer. She began to notice things Dale had been teaching her all along. How to move smart. How to breathe right, how to fight with mind before muscle. One evening, during a lightning storm, Dale took her to a cliff overlooking the valley. The thunder rolled like cannon fire. "Do you know what fear is for, Princess?" he asked. "To warn us of danger," she said. He shook his head. "No, fear is a teacher. You can't erase it. You have to learn to act while it's screaming in your head." He handed her a small blade. "Show me what you've learned." She hesitated, then swung. Her form was clumsy but determined. Dale blocked each strike easily, guiding her movements, correcting her stance. When she lost balance, he said, "Again." For hours they trained under the storm until she could no longer lift her arm. Finally, she dropped to one knee, chest heaving. "I can't." Dale looked down at her. "You said that the first day," he said quietly. "But you're still standing." Era lifted her head. The rain washed over her face. She didn't answer, but her eyes held something new, a spark that hadn't been there before. Weeks later, a messenger arrived from Vardis. He brought news that shocked her. Another planet had fallen to the core dominion. Her father's message was short. "Learn all you can, my daughter. Our world depends on it." Era folded the message carefully. She stared out toward the training fields where the humans were laughing, exhausted, covered in dust, but proud. She realized then that strength was not in size or power. It was in never giving up. When Dale walked up beside her, she turned to him. "Commander," she said softly, "what happens when a person fails too many times?" He looked at her with that calm expression again. "Then they stop counting failures," he said, "and start counting lessons." Era smiled faintly. "Then I think I'm learning a lot." Dale chuckled. "Good, tomorrow you lead the drill. Me?" She blinked. "Yes, you've been trained by humans long enough. Time to think like one." That night, Ira couldn't sleep. The wind outside howled like the war she had left behind. But deep down, for the first time in her life, she felt something steady inside her. Not fear, not weakness, but will, she whispered to herself. "I will not stay weak." Outside, lightning flashed across the sky, and for a moment, her reflection in the mirror didn't look fragile anymore. It looked determined. The transformation had begun. Morning on Eden 9 came with no gentle sunrise. The planet's twin moons faded behind thick gray clouds, and strong winds carried dust across the training fields. The humans called it the wake-up call of the world. For Princess Era, it was just another day of pain, sweat, and lessons she never imagined learning. Commander Dale stood before the line of recruits, humans, and now one small alien princess among them. His eyes scanned them sharply. "Listen up," he shouted. "You're not here to look strong. You're here to become strong. There's a difference." Era stood in the front row, her body still sore from yesterday's climb. Her hands were wrapped in rough cloth, her shoulders tense. The humans beside her looked relaxed, some even smiling. She felt like a small child among giants. "Today," Dale said, pacing before them, "you run the Eden circuit." The recruits groaned. One whispered, "That's 20 kilometers." Dale ignored them. "You will carry your gear. You will climb the ridge. You will cross the mud trench. If you fall behind, you run it again tomorrow." Era blinked. "Again?" she whispered to herself. "Princess," Dale said without looking at her, "if you have energy to talk, you have energy to run. Move." The signal blared and they began to run. The ground was uneven, filled with sharp rocks and deep sand. Every step sank a little. Ira tried to keep up, but soon she was breathing hard. Her heart pounded painfully in her chest. The human soldiers moved like machines, steady, quick, focused. She stumbled once, then again. "Don't stop," shouted Dale from behind. "You stop when you can't move, not when you feel tired." Ira pushed forward, her legs burning. Sweat poured down her neck. Her lungs screamed for air. When she thought she couldn't go another step, a voice beside her said, "Keep your eyes on that rock up ahead. Just reach that one." It was Liam, the young human who had encouraged her before. His face was red from running, but he smiled. "Don't think about 20 kilometers. Think about this one rock." Era nodded weakly. She focused on the rock, and when she reached it, she chose another. Step by step, she made it across the rough path. When they reached the trench filled with thick mud, her body almost gave up. She looked at the pit, wide and dark, and froze. Dale appeared beside her. "You planning to fly across?" he asked calmly. I can't do this," she whispered. He pointed toward the trench. "The only way forward is through." She took a breath, closed her eyes, and jumped. The mud swallowed her legs immediately. She sank almost to her waist. The smell was awful, and her arms felt like lead. She struggled, slipping again and again, but each time she tried to move a little further, Dale's voice reached her through the wind. "Don't fight the ground. Use it. Step with control." Era focused. Slowly, painfully, she pulled one leg free, then another. The mud fought her, but she refused to stop. When she finally climbed out the other side, she collapsed, covered in dirt, breathing hard but smiling for the first time. Dale's voice came again, calm but proud. "Good, you didn't quit. Remember that." Days turned into weeks, and the training grew harder. Every morning started before dawn. Era carried heavy packs, practiced combat drills, learned survival techniques, and studied human tactics late into the night. Her hands were full of blisters. Her muscles ached constantly, but she began to notice small changes. She could run longer, climb faster, and even lift things that once seemed impossible. Dale's teaching was strict but fair. He never praised her directly, but he also never looked disappointed. When she failed, he said, "Then learn." When she succeeded, he only nodded and gave her the next task. One evening, as the recruits sat around a campfire, someone asked Dale, "Sir, why do you push us so hard?" Dale looked into the fire. "Because the universe doesn't care if you're tired," he said. "It only stops trying to kill you when you stop letting it." The others nodded quietly. Ira didn't speak, but the words stayed with her long after the fire burned out. One afternoon, Dale gave her a wooden training sword. "Time for combat drills." Era held the weapon awkwardly. "I'm not ready." "No one is ever ready," he replied. "That's why we train." He faced her with his own stick. "Attack!" She hesitated, then swung. It was slow, clumsy, and unbalanced. Dale blocked easily and tapped her arm. "Too open, again." She tried again, faster. He blocked again. Better, but still thinking too much. Again, again, again. By the 10th attempt, she was panting heavily. "I can't beat you," she said. "You're not supposed to," he replied. "You're supposed to improve." He moved closer, lowering his stick. "Ira, strength isn't about winning every fight. It's about refusing to stop fighting." She nodded, breathing hard, and tried again. This time she didn't think. She moved by instinct. Her swing was off balance, but it had force. Dale blocked it, but she saw him step back slightly. It was a small victory, but a real one, and for the first time he smiled. "Now you're learning." At night, Era often sat by the fire, staring at her hands. The soft skin she once had was gone. Her palms were hard and scarred. But instead of feeling shame, she felt proud. Each mark was proof that she was changing. She wrote letters to her father every week, though she never knew if they reached him. In one letter she wrote, "Father, the humans do not see weakness as a curse. They see it as a challenge, I think. I am learning to see myself the same way." A month later, Dale took the recruits to a high plateau known as the Ridge of Trials. It was where every soldier faced their endurance test. Ira looked up at the steep rock wall and felt a familiar fear rise in her chest. "This climb," Dale said, "isn't about strength. It's about trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in your choices. If you fall, no one catches you." The recruits began to climb. Ira followed, her claws gripping the stone. Halfway up, her arms started to shake. Rocks crumbled under her feet. She looked down and froze. The ground seemed impossibly far away. Her breathing quickened. "Don't look down," Dale's voice echoed from below. "Look forward. Keep moving." Her heart raced, but she remembered his earlier words, "Fear is a teacher." She took a slow breath and kept climbing. The wind whipped against her face. She slipped once, her foot scraping against the stone, but she caught herself and pushed higher. When she reached the top, she fell to her knees, laughing through tears. She looked down at the camp far below and felt something powerful, not just relief, but confidence. She had done it alone. Dale climbed up moments later. "You're getting faster," he said. She looked at him and smiled. "I'm getting stronger," he nodded. "No, you're becoming yourself." Weeks passed and Era's training continued. She learned hand-to-hand combat, basic tactics, and even human teamwork exercises. She began to move naturally with the others, no longer a fragile outsider, but one of them. When she made mistakes, they helped her. When they struggled, she supported them. One rainy night, the camp alarm blared. A simulation attack began and part of their test. Robots armed with low-level stunners stormed the field. The recruits scrambled for defense. Ira grabbed a practice spear and joined the line. "Stay together," she shouted. "Watch your flanks." The humans followed her lead without hesitation. The fight was fierce, and though the robots were only machines, their speed and numbers were overwhelming. Ira's arms ached. Her breath came fast, but she kept fighting. When one robot lunged at Liam, she blocked its strike and drove her spear into its chest. Sparks flew as it fell. When the last robot was destroyed, Dale stepped out from the shadows. His expression was unreadable. "Who led the defense?" he asked. The recruits pointed at Era. She stepped forward nervously. "It was a team effort, sir." Dale studied her for a moment, then said quietly, "You didn't freeze. You didn't run. That's leadership." Era bowed her head, but inside her heart swelled. The weak princess of Vardis had led human soldiers in battle, even if it was just a test. That night the storm cleared. The stars shone bright over Eden 9. Era stood outside her tent, breathing the cool air. Dale walked up beside her. "You've changed," he said. She looked at her reflection in a puddle, dirt-covered, scarred, and strong. "I don't feel like the same person." He nodded. "Good. The old one couldn't survive what's coming." She turned to him. "Do you think I'm ready?" "For what?" he asked, to go home. "To help my people." Dale was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Not yet. You've learned the human way of strength. But to win a war, you must learn something harder, when not to fight." Era frowned, not understanding. But she nodded. "Then teach me," he smiled faintly. "That's the spirit. Training continues tomorrow." As Dale walked away, Era looked at the stars again. Somewhere among them, her father was waiting, her people still in danger. The thought no longer filled her with fear. It filled her with purpose. For the first time in her life, she believed she could make a difference. And under the cold silver light of Eden 9, the once weak princess began to feel like a warrior. Months had passed on Eden 9, and the once fragile Princess Era was now almost unrecognizable. The weak, trembling girl who had arrived from a golden palace was gone. In her place stood a determined young woman, her movements sharper, her voice steady, and her eyes filled with quiet fire. Her body still carried marks of her struggle, small scars on her arms, rough skin on her hands, but she no longer hid them. Each mark was a reminder of how far she had come. She was no longer afraid of pain. Pain had become her teacher. Commander Dale watched her one morning as she sparred with Liam, the human recruit who had once encouraged her through her first run. Era moved quickly, blocking and striking with precision. Her form was still not perfect, but it carried power and rhythm. She no longer hesitated. When Liam swung too hard, she dodged and tapped his shoulder with her training spear. Point, she said with a faint smile. The other recruits cheered. Liam laughed, panting. You're faster than before. I'll have to stop going easy on you. Dale crossed his arms, nodding to himself. You're both getting better, he said. Then his eyes met Era's. Especially you. But don't let victory make you soft. The real test hasn't come yet. Era nodded. She understood now that Dale's lessons were never about the drills alone. Every task, every hardship, every bruise, it all built something deeper inside her. That night the wind blew strong across the training camp. Ira couldn't sleep. She stepped outside her tent and looked up at the dark sky filled with strange constellations. Somewhere among those stars was her homeworld, Vardis Prime. She missed her father, her people, and the songs of the crystal towers. But when she closed her eyes, she remembered her father's worried face the day she left. She whispered softly, I'm changing, Father. I will return stronger. Footsteps approached behind her. It was Dale, holding 2 cups of warm liquid. He handed one to her. Can't sleep? Ira shook her head. I keep thinking about home, about the war. He sipped from his cup. You'll face it soon enough. But tell me, what do you want to do when you return? I want to help my people, she said quickly. Then after a pause, she added, I want to prove that I'm not weak. Dale looked at her carefully. You don't need to prove that anymore. Not to anyone. Not even to your father. Then why am I still afraid? She asked quietly. He smiled faintly. Because courage doesn't mean no fear. It means moving forward even when fear follows you. Era nodded, holding those words close to her heart. In the following weeks, Dale changed the training style. It became less about strength and more about understanding, reading the enemy, predicting attacks, thinking fast. He wanted her to think like a human soldier. He explained, humans are small, fragile, and easy to kill. That's why we became clever. We win by using our minds as much as our hands. He took her to a simulation field, a large dome where holographic battle scenes could be created. Inside, they faced moving images of robotic opponents that attacked with precision. Ira had to dodge, plan, and strike back, not with brute strength, but with tactics. At first, she was overwhelmed. The machines came fast, surrounding her from all sides. She stumbled and fell. Dale stopped the simulation. You're focusing on the enemy, he said. Focus on the space between them. The openings. That's where humans survive, a mine in the gaps others don't see. They ran the simulation again. This time she moved differently, lighter, more focused. When one opponent swung high, she ducked low and swept its legs. When another charged, she sidestepped and struck its weak joint. By the end, she was breathing hard but smiling. Dale nodded. Now you're thinking. Weeks passed and her reputation spread through the camp. Other trainees began asking her for advice, calling her Iron Spirit, a nickname humans gave her because she never quit. No matter how exhausted she was, one day, while resting after a long session, a group of new recruits approached her. Is it true you're a princess? One asked. Era smiled softly. I was. But here we're all soldiers. They laughed, but their respect for her was clear. To them, she wasn't just an alien princess, and she was one of them. Dale noticed the change too. He often observed her quietly from a distance, knowing that his student had started to lead without even realizing it. One afternoon, everything changed. A warning alarm echoed across the base. The communication tower lit up with red lights. Dale ran to the control room and Era followed. On the main screen, a message flashed. Unauthorized ships entering orbit. It's not a drill, said one officer. Raiders, maybe Corps Scouts, Dale frowned. All non-combatants to shelter. Soldiers to defense lines. Era's heart pounded. Real danger, not training, not simulation, had come to Eden 9. She turned to Dale. What do I do? He handed her a weapon. You do what you've trained for. Stay with your team. Protect each other. The air outside filled with the sound of engines and explosions. Small enemy crafts landed near the edge of the camp, dropping metallic attackers. Raider drones, fast and deadly. The recruits grabbed weapons and took cover. Era stood beside Liam and a few others behind a barricade. Sparks filled the air as lasers hit the metal walls. Hold the line! Someone shouted. Era's hands shook for a moment. This was no test. If she failed now, people would die. She took a deep breath, hearing Dale's voice in her memory. Act while fear screams in your head. She leaned out and fired, hitting one of the drones squarely. It exploded, showering sparks across the sand. Liam grinned. Nice shot. They fought side by side, covering each other, moving just like in training. But then a large drone broke through their line, heading straight for the communication post. Ira saw it before anyone else. Without thinking, she ran toward it. Ira, wait! Liam shouted, but she didn't stop. The drone turned, its weapon charging. She rolled across the ground, dodging the blast, and jumped onto its back. Using the spear she carried, she struck the weak spot Dale had taught her to look for, the joint near its neck. The weapon pierced deep and the drone fell, collapsing in sparks and smoke. The battlefield went quiet for a moment. Everyone stared at her. Even Dale, watching from a distance, gave a small approving nod. When the last of the raiders retreated, the recruits gathered around her, cheering. Ira stood still, chest rising and falling with heavy breaths, her weapon glowing faintly. She didn't feel fear anymore, only calm. After the battle, the base was full of life again. Soldiers repaired damaged buildings, shared food, and laughed in relief. Ira sat near the fire, cleaning her weapon. Dale approached and sat beside her. You did well, he said. She looked up. I didn't think. I just acted. That's what warriors do when the training becomes part of them, he replied. You've crossed the line from student to soldier. Ira was silent for a moment. Does that mean my training is done? He shook his head. Training never ends. But now you understand the heart of it, she tilted her head. What is it? Responsibility, he said. Strength isn't for yourself. It's for the people who can't fight. That's what makes humans dangerous, and we fight hardest for others. Era looked into the fire, thinking about her father, her people, and the countless lives lost in the war. She finally understood. Strength was not about power. It was about protection. A week later, a message arrived from Vardis Prime. It was short and urgent. The Dominion's armies have reached our borders. The king requests your return. Era read the message with trembling hands. The moment she had waited for had come. She went to Dale's office that evening. He was writing something on his screen when she entered. You're leaving, he said without looking up. Yes, she replied. My people need me. He turned to face her, his expression calm but serious. Then go, but remember, strength isn't just what you've learned. It's who you've become, she nodded. I won't forget, teacher. For the first time, she saw a small smile on his face. You never do. The next morning, the camp gathered to see her off. The human recruits saluted as she walked toward the ship. Liam stepped forward and handed her a small pendant, a piece of metal carved into the shape of a star. So you don't forget us, he said. Era smiled. I could never forget humans. As the ship rose through the sky, Dale watched silently from the ground. He knew the next time they met, she wouldn't be a student anymore. She would be a leader. When the ship entered orbit, Era looked down at the planet that had changed her. Eden 9 had been her battlefield, her classroom, and her home. It had broken her and rebuilt her. She touched the pendant on her neck and whispered, I will make you proud, teacher. Then she turned toward the stars, her eyes glowing with determination. The weak princess of Vardis was gone. In her place was something new, a warrior of two worlds, carrying both alien grace and human fire, and far away on her home planet. Her father would soon see that the gift he had given to a human had returned to him as a miracle. The shuttle descended onto Vardis Prime in silence. Unlike Eden 9, the planet's surface was calm and shining. Crystal towers reflected the sun, and the streets of the capital were filled with citizens going about their daily lives. But beneath the beauty, tension ran high. The core Dominion had grown stronger, and every Vardian could feel the looming threat. Inside the shuttle, Princess Era adjusted her uniform, her posture straight and confident. She no longer looked like the fragile girl who had left months ago. Her muscles were toned, her hands calloused, her eyes sharp. She carried herself like a warrior ready for any battle, a stark contrast to the delicate princess her father had once held in his arms. As the shuttle landed and the doors opened, palace guards approached. Some of them stared at her in disbelief. They barely recognized her. She stepped forward gracefully, her boots making firm contact with the polished floor. Every movement spoke of discipline, every step of purpose. When she entered the royal hall, the reactions were immediate. Courtiers gasped. Guards whispered among themselves. Even a few nobles who had once looked down on her stopped their conversations to stare. Ira walked with a steady gaze, her shoulders squared, her cloak flowing behind her. King Renar rose from his throne as she approached. His eyes widened slightly, then softened. Era, he said quietly, you have changed. She knelt before him briefly as tradition demanded, but her expression was composed and serious. Father, she said, I have returned. I am ready to serve my people in the way you hoped I could. Reinar's heart swelled with pride, but he remained quiet for a moment. He had sent his only child to humans expecting she might learn survival, but not this. This presence, this fire, this confidence in it was more than he had ever imagined. The first test of her transformation came almost immediately. The royal training grounds had been rebuilt since her departure. The generals and palace trainers gathered, expecting her to perform, though many of them doubted she could. Era stepped forward. I will spar with anyone who doubts my abilities, she said. Her voice was calm, yet carried authority. One by one, the strongest warriors of Vardis attempted to challenge her. Each strike was met with precise blocks, careful footwork, and strategic counters. She did not rely on raw strength alone. She used her mind, her speed, and her human-trained tactics. By the end of the day, every general who had doubted her was speechless. Whispers filled the hall. She fights like a human. No, she fights like a combination of two worlds. King Reinar stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. You have exceeded my expectations, he said softly. You are no longer my weak daughter. You are a warrior of our people, and more. Era smiled faintly. I only became strong because someone taught me what courage truly means. Word of her transformation spread across the capital. Citizens came to watch her train. They saw a princess who could run longer, fight harder, and lead with authority. Children who once believed royalty was untouchable now looked at her as a role model. She had become a symbol of hope. Even the palace nobles who had scoffed at her weakness could no longer ignore her. One elder approached the king. Your Majesty, he said, perhaps we underestimated the value of learning from others. This human training has elevated her beyond what we imagined possible. Reinar nodded. It has, he replied quietly, watching Era as she demonstrated a human combat drill to a group of young recruits. Despite her return, not all welcomed her newfound strength. The alien generals felt challenged by her authority. Many of them had fought and died to prove their worth, and now a former weakling commanded respect not through rank, but through skill. General Vorak stepped forward one day. Princess, he said sharply, we appreciate your efforts, but leadership is earned by the battlefield, not by human tricks. Era met his gaze evenly. Then allow me to earn it, General. If you doubt me, test me in the way your ancestors valued. I will prove myself. Vorak hesitated, unsure how to respond. No one had ever spoken to him with such calm confidence. It was clear that Era was no longer the same girl he had once dismissed. In the following days, she began leading training exercises for the Vardian forces. Using the techniques she had learned from humans, teamwork, strategy, observation, and quick thinking, she guided squads through complex drills. She taught them to anticipate enemy movements, work in formation, and think several steps ahead rather than relying solely on brute strength. At first, many soldiers resisted. They were proud of their traditional methods and saw her ways as unconventional. But when Era demonstrated the results, faster response times, fewer injuries, better coordination, even the stubbornest soldiers began to follow her instructions. The humans' lessons had taught her not just physical skills, but leadership. She learned to communicate clearly, inspire confidence, and lead by example. Her soldiers trusted her because she had endured what they had, and more. One evening, as Era walked through the palace gardens, she found her father waiting. The stars reflected on the crystal fountains, and the air smelled of jasmine and cool stone. You have returned not just stronger, Era, Reinar said softly, but wiser. I see it in the way you carry yourself. Your people. They look at you differently now. Era bowed slightly. I only hope I can continue to serve them well, Father. Reinar smiled faintly. Strength is not enough. You must also inspire. You have done both. But the true test will come soon. The core dominion will not wait for us to be ready. Era nodded. Her thoughts turned to the countless hours of training, the lessons from Commander Dale, the hardships she had endured. Every struggle had prepared her for this moment. The next morning, a messenger from the front lines arrived with urgent news. The core dominion had advanced further than expected. Entire cities along the border had fallen. Panic spread among the council and citizens. Many generals hesitated, unsure how to respond. The king turned to Era. "This is your chance to show what you have learned. Lead a strike team if you think you are ready." Era's eyes hardened. "I am ready," she said. Her voice carried the calm authority of someone who had faced fear and survived. Her strike team was small but carefully chosen. Soldiers who trusted her, were quick to learn, and could adapt. She led them across the countryside, teaching them every tactic she had learned from humans. Flanking maneuvers, rapid communication, using the terrain for advantage. The core Dominion scouts did not expect her strategies. Era's squad outmaneuvered them, capturing supplies and driving the enemy back from key positions. Each success built her confidence and the confidence of those who followed her. Returning to the capital, Era reported to her father. "The soldiers responded well. They are ready to fight when the time comes." King Reinar studied her closely. "I see now that my gift to a human has returned to me as something greater than I imagined. Not only have you learned strength, but you have awakened courage in others. That is what makes a true warrior." Era smiled faintly. "I learned from humans. But I also learned from your people. The Vardians have courage too. I only helped them see it." Reinar placed a hand on her shoulder. "And in doing so, you have proven that a single person can change the course of an entire empire." Word of Era's return spread throughout the galaxy. Stories began to circulate about the once weak princess who had trained with humans and returned a leader capable of uniting two worlds. Children and adults alike looked to her as a symbol of hope. Even the palace nobles who had once doubted her now approached with respect. Era treated them with calm dignity, showing that true power is not about intimidation, but about guiding others toward a common goal. She continued training tirelessly, knowing the war was far from over. Every night she reviewed the tactics, studied maps of the border worlds, and prepared her soldiers for the coming battles. She understood now that true leadership meant constant preparation and vigilance, and so, the princess who had been considered weak became a figure of legend on Vardis Prime. Not because she wielded a weapon better than anyone else, but because she carried a spirit that inspired those around her. She had learned the human way, courage, strategy, and resilience, and combined it with Vardian strength and discipline. For the first time, King Reinar could truly see the future of his people, not just in the raw power of their armies, but in the courage and leadership of his daughter, a warrior forged by the lessons of two worlds. And as the stars shone brightly over the capital, Era knew that the greatest challenges were still ahead, but she was no longer afraid. She had become the leader her people needed, and the warrior the galaxy would soon remember. The twin suns of Vardis Prime rose over the borderlands, painting the landscape in shades of gold and crimson. Smoke still lingered in the valleys from earlier skirmishes, and the distant sound of machinery and battle echoed faintly across the hills. The core Dominion had arrived in full force. At the head of the Vardian army stood Princess Era, her armor gleaming under the morning light. The people who had once doubted her strength now followed her without question. Soldiers lined up in disciplined formations, their eyes filled with determination. Era's heart beat steadily, her mind calm. The months she had spent on Eden 9 training with humans had prepared her not just physically but mentally. She remembered Commander Dale's words, "Strength is for others. Courage is for those who cannot fight." That lesson guided every decision she made. Beside her, General Vorak scowled but remained silent. He had tested her patience and her strategies over the past weeks, and, though he would never admit it openly, he now respected her judgment. Era raised her hand, signaling the advance. "Forward," she said. Her voice carried authority without harshness. "Stay together. Watch each other's flanks. Move smart, not just fast." The Vardian soldiers surged forward, following her lead. The terrain was harsh, jagged rocks, steep cliffs, and deep ravines. Yet step by step, Era guided them through. When a core drone ambushed a unit, she quickly directed soldiers to flank and neutralize it. When a trap threatened the rear, she signaled another squad to secure the path. Her movements were precise. Her mind thought ahead, predicting the enemy's strategy. It was not brute force alone that allowed them to succeed. It was human-inspired tactics combined with Vardian strength. As the battle intensified, the core Dominion's flagship appeared above the horizon. Its shadow fell over the valley like a storm. The enemy's troops were well armed, more numerous and aggressive. Panic began to rise among some soldiers, but Era stood tall, her voice cutting through the fear. "Do not falter," she shouted. "Remember what we trained for. Trust yourselves and each other. Move as one." The soldiers responded. Their fear turned into focus. They moved with coordination, anticipating the enemy's actions and countering them efficiently. Ira led the charge herself, her spear flashing under the sunlight as she guided the front lines. She remembered every lesson from Eden 9, dodging, countering, leading, thinking quickly. Every step she took inspired others. Her soldiers saw not just a princess, but a warrior who had faced fear and prevailed. In the thick of the battle, Era spotted a corps commander directing reinforcements toward a critical supply depot. Capturing it would cripple the Dominion's advance. Without hesitation, she turned to a small team. "Liam, take the left flank. Vorak, cover the rear. I'll go straight for the depot. Move." The soldiers followed her instructions without question. Her strategy was risky. She was venturing into enemy territory with only a few troops, but her confidence inspired those around her. As they approached the depot, corps drones attacked in waves. Ira ducked, rolled, and struck with her spear. Each movement was a blend of human speed and Vardian power. Sparks flew, metal clanged, and dust filled the air, but she never wavered. She could feel the adrenaline, but it was different from fear. It was clarity. The clarity of someone who had trained for this moment her entire life. Finally, they reached the depot. Ira directed her troops to secure the area, while she faced the corps commander directly. The enemy was larger, heavily armored, and wielded a glowing weapon of energy. "You are far from home, Princess," the commander said, his voice mechanical but menacing. "I am where I need to be," Era replied, raising her spear, "and I fight for my people." The duel began. The corps commander attacked with heavy swings, but Era moved swiftly, sidestepping, parrying, and countering with precise strikes. The training on Eden 9 had taught her to anticipate, to read the opponent, to turn weakness into opportunity. Era saw a gap in his armor and acted. She leaped, spinning in midair, and struck with all her strength. The weapon was disarmed and the commander fell to the ground. Her team secured the depot, ensuring the Dominion could not use it to advance. Word of her victory traveled quickly. Soldiers on the front lines rallied, emboldened by the sight of their princess leading from the front. The core Dominion began to retreat in confusion, unable to predict the strategies she employed. Even General Vorak, watching the battlefield, could not deny her brilliance. He approached her after the fight. "You have done what no other could," he admitted quietly. "Your strength, your leadership, it saved countless lives today." Ira nodded, not proud but resolute. "We fight together. Victory is never just one person." Back at the capital, King Reiner received the report with a mixture of relief and astonishment. He summoned Era to the throne room. "Child," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, "you returned to me a weak girl, and now you are a warrior who has changed the fate of our people. How did this happen?" Era knelt before him as was custom, but her eyes held confidence. "Father, I learned from humans that strength comes from perseverance, from courage, and from protecting others. I learned that weakness is only a beginning, not the end. You gave me a chance, and I used it to become stronger." Reinar smiled, tears in his eyes. "You are the hope of Vardis. You are more than I could have imagined." The following weeks were filled with rebuilding and preparing for the next waves of the Dominion. Era trained soldiers tirelessly, combining Vardian techniques with human strategies. She inspired not only the army but also civilians, teaching them resilience, courage, and teamwork. Children practiced drills she taught them. Soldiers repeated her tactics. Even the palace guards who had once doubted her now took lessons from her daily. Era's leadership transformed the culture of Vardis. Strength was no longer measured by brute power alone, but by intelligence, courage, and unity. One night, Ira stood on the palace balcony gazing at the stars. She remembered Eden 9, the harsh training, the storms, the lessons from Dale. She touched the pendant Liam had given her, remembering the humans who had shaped her. She whispered, "I will carry this strength always. Not for myself, but for all who cannot fight." From behind, her father approached. "Era," he said softly, "your people will remember this day. You have given them courage beyond measure. You have returned not just as a warrior, but as a leader who inspires hope." Era turned to him, her eyes glowing with determination. I will continue to fight for our people, Father. The war is not over. But we are ready. Together we can overcome anything. The final battle against the Dominion approached. Soldiers from every corner of Vardis Prime gathered under her command. Ira moved among them, checking equipment, sharing strategies, and offering words of encouragement. When the Dominion arrived, they expected chaos. Instead, they faced a united front, disciplined, coordinated, and inspired. Ira led the charge, her spear striking with precision, her strategies turning potential defeat into victory after victory. By the end of the day, the Dominion retreated in disarray. Vardis Prime had survived not because of raw power alone, but because of the courage and leadership of a single princess who had learned to combine human tactics with Vardian strength. After the battle, King Reinar called a ceremony to honor the defenders. Ira stood before the people, not as the fragile princess who had left, but as a warrior, a leader, and a symbol of hope. The crowd cheered. Soldiers saluted. Civilians lifted their hands in respect. King Reinar stepped forward, placing his hand on her shoulder. Ira, you have transformed not only yourself but our people. Your courage, your wisdom, and your leadership will be remembered for generations. The gift I gave to a human returned to me as a miracle. Ira bowed her head, her heart full of pride and humility. I am grateful, Father. But the true miracle is what humans taught me. That strength is born from perseverance, courage, and the will to protect others. I hope to honor them in every battle we fight. That night the stars shone brighter than ever over Vardis Prime. Ira stood on the balcony, looking at the horizon. The battles ahead were uncertain, but she was no longer afraid. She had become a warrior in every sense, forged by hardship, guided by wisdom, and strengthened by the lessons of two worlds. And in the heart of the princess who had once been weak burned a fire that would never go out, the fire of humanity.